Okay, so somebody was asking me if I could do some studies and talk about the Grijalva family. So I did some research and I found out that the Grijalva family has some very interesting history. So there was a man named Juan de Grijalva, and he was one of the conquistadores who conquered Cuba. He was the first one to name it New Spain. He was one of the first Europeans to land in the Yucatan peninsula. And this guy lived in the 1500s. He was born about 1480, died 15 something. And then there's another Juan Pablo de Grijalva who lived in the 1700s. Now this guy lived more closer to home. He was born in southern Arizona, well, what is today southern Arizona, northern Mexico, around the borderline area right there. And he was one of the ones who founded a lot of Northern California. So I'll tell you his story as well. So if you guys follow my channel, you'll notice I've been doing surnames and coats of arms. I'm going to keep doing those videos and teach all kinds of people about their surnames, but those are just quick facts. Some of these last names, I'll go into detail and tell you stories about people who bore that last name. So today we're talking about Juan de Grijalva and Juan Pablo de Grijalva and the Grijalva surname, where it came from.
The surname Grijalva was first found in Castile and in the mountains of Leon. Records also show an early account of the name was in Calvados in Normandy. One line of this family name are said to be directly descended from Queen Isabella of Spain. Grijalva is a Spanish habitational name that comes from places called Grijalba, particularly the one in Burgos province. The place name comes from the words iglesia, church, and alva, white in Old Spanish. Stay tuned and I will teach you some more of the history of the Grijalva surname.
So the surname Grijalva was first found in Spain in the kingdoms of Castile and Leon. Now these were kingdoms in northern Spain. Grijalva was also found in Normandy, which is in France. So these are all in the same area of northern Spain. If you don't know, Spain attaches to France. So northern Spain and southern France would attach to each other. So the name Grijalva comes from northern Spain, and it's even said that there's a line of the Grijalva family that descends from Queen Isabella of Spain herself. So the name Grijalva comes from the names Iglesia, which is church in Spanish, and Alva, which was church in Old Spanish. So that's Grijalva, like a white church. Okay, so Juan de Grijalva, he was an explorer, a conquistador. He was born around 1480 in Spain, and he died around 1527 in Honduras. So his uncle was Diego Velasquez, a famous conquistador. Him and his uncle were the conquistadores who conquered Cuba. Then his uncle became the governor of Cuba. So in the year 1511, Juan de Grijalva and his uncle conquered Cuba. Then in 1514, Juan de Grijalva himself founded the city of Trinidad. In 1517, Diego Velasquez went on an expedition. He wanted to go west of Cuba and see what was on those other islands. The Yucatan Peninsula, they thought that was an island. They didn't know that there was mainland. At the time, they had found Cuba and conquered Cuba, and so they were taking their ships and going to the other islands. While they landed on the Yucatan, they had a fight with the Mayans, and about 25 Spaniards got killed. So they left, they lost. That was in 1517. Now a year later, in 1518, Diego Velasquez is the governor of Cuba, and Juan de Grijalva is who he sends on an expedition to go to those islands in the Yucatan Peninsula, which they had visited before, where they had their 25 soldiers slaughtered. But Governor Velasquez told Grijalva he wanted him to just trade with the people, to talk to them, gather intel and try to trade with them and make peace with them. He didn't tell him to create a settlement. So Juan de Grijalva and about 200 men, including Hernan Cortez and Pedro Alvarado, went with him on this expedition. He toured all these islands. He hopped from island to island west of Cuba, the islands that are east of Mexico, right there off the east coast of Mexico. He went through all these islands. As a matter of fact, he's the first European from a European perspective to have discovered one of these islands. Now this is what is known today as Cozumel Island. Juan de Grijalva discovered this island. He was also the first to name this New Spain, this area at the time that they called the New World. He was the first to name it New Spain. He was also the first to land on the Yucatan Peninsula and actually have a meeting with King Moctezuma of the Aztecs people. He mapped a lot of rivers, he mapped all those islands. So he was an important person. And then he landed in the Yucatan Peninsula. He heard that there was an empire more inland and that there was gold and treasures. And he met with the delegation of King Moctezuma and talked with them. So he was also the first Spaniard, the first European to have heard about the Aztec Empire, the Mexica. And by him finding out about the Aztec Empire, he found out that the Yucatan Peninsula wasn't an island, but a peninsula. So after he was done with this expedition and exploration, he went back to Cuba to his uncle, who was the governor, and he reported everything to him. But his uncle was mad at him because he didn't establish any settlements. But that wasn't his order. His order was to trade and try to be peaceful with them, which he was. But his uncle got mad at him anyway, and then he sent Hernan Cortez in his place. Now, Juan de Grijalva went with Hernan Cortez on his conquest of Mexico, but he would have been the leader if it wasn't for his uncle getting mad at him. Juan de Grijalva was killed by natives in 1527 in Honduras. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Juan Pablo de Grijalva. Now, Juan Pablo was born in 1741 in what would be today Arizona and Sonora, like northern Mexico, southern Arizona, a place that was called Mission Guevavi in Arizona. But back then, Arizona didn't exist. That land was part of New Mexico territory, or what they called the Kingdom of New Mexico. So the governor of New Mexico, who was Juan Bautista de Anza at the time, sent Juan Pablo de Grijalva to California. Him and a group of colonizers were the ones who founded San Francisco. They built a big old, like a building there, like a presidio, and he served there for 10 years. He also helped found the missions of what is now Santa Clara and San Jose. Now these are bigger cities now, but he was the ones who founded these towns and made these settlements. So Juan Pablo de Grijalva is one of the founders of Northern California. Now, he had 2 daughters. His 2 daughters got married in Northern California. And one of them, so their last names would have changed. One of them moved south to Los Angeles and the other one stayed in Northern California. So the Grijalva blood would have survived through them, but their last names would have changed. But Grijalva was an important name in Spain. It was important during the Spanish conquest of Cuba, and it was even important in the founding of Northern California. So Grijalva is an important name, so I wanted to talk about it and explain it. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you learned something new. This is Tragedy. I'm out.